Welcome to the Walrus Talks Power Economy, presented by Concordia University and Voltage. I'm Jennifer Ollett. I am the Executive Director of the Walrus, and I'll be your host for this evening. We are thrilled to be back here in person at the Isabel Bader Theatre in Toronto, also streaming live online at thewalrus.ca. A round of applause and hello to the over 600 households who have registered for our live stream. Online, we have audience members tuning in from all over Canada, including Red Deer, Victoria, Haines Junction, and Sydney. And also a welcome to folks who are tuned in and watching from around the world. Hello, Kampala, Nashville, London, and Washington, D.C. We encourage you all to share this conversation this evening on social media. You can tag us at The Walrus on your platform of choice and use our hashtag #WalrusTalks. A hashtag is a nice way to connect our in-person audience with our audience who is online and at home. I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we're on in downtown Toronto. We are gathered within the bounds of Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is also the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Today, Toronto is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. At the Walrus, we're honored to carry on a long tradition of storytelling, and we encourage you all, whether you're here in the room with us or online, to think about the land that you're on and its history. A bit about the Walrus. At the Walrus, we strive to be Canada's conversation. We cover stories across Canada to deepen our understanding on who we are for those inside and outside of the country. This year, from tariffs to taunts of becoming the 51st state, Canada has become the conversation, and the country is standing strong. We're responding to this moment with facts, analysis, and even some humor, as is Canadian way. You can find The Walrus online at thewalrus.ca, in print, on newsstands, or by subscribing to us. You can also listen to our stories in audio, by podcast, and online, or take part in events like this one. This work is independent, and it's powered by our community of support, donors, partners, and supporters. So thank you all for being here, and especially to Concordia University and Voltage for partnering with us on these talks. To tell us more, I'd like to welcome to the stage Graham Carr, who's the president of Vice-Chancellor at Concordia University. I'm a proud Concordia alum, so welcome back, Graham. It's always great to see you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. It's great to see everybody here this evening. Thank you all for coming. It's terrific to be partnering with the Walrus again and to be back in Toronto. And also to know that people are tuning in from around the world. I guess I'm curious, like perhaps some of you, to know which household in Washington is listening in tonight. Not all of you know about Concordia. We're a university in Montreal with about 50,000 students on 2 campuses, one right in the heart of the city and one 6 or 7 kilometers to the west in a residential area between Notre-Dame-de-Grâce and Montreal West. We're the only university in the country that has an engineering and computer science school named for a woman. She happens to be with us tonight in row number 2 here, Gina Cody, who is now the Chancellor of the university and a proud resident of Toronto. The Gina Cody School is actually one of the jewels in the crown at the university. It's the largest engineering computer science school in Quebec. Last fall, it was the first university in North America to be named a Research One partner with Ericsson, the large Swedish multinational in the communications sphere. In 2023, the Gina Cody School researchers in software engineering were ranked 5th in the world for the impact of their research. And last night, we were at a celebration event on campus where one of the young researchers was in computer science was getting an award for having published the most influential article in his field in the last 10 years. So that's pretty exciting. Our Molson School of Business, which is home to about 9,000 students, 2 weeks ago, became one of the fewer than 1% of business schools in the world to enjoy double accreditation from ACSB and Equus, the two largest accreditation entities in the world. So we're very proud of that. And of course, our Faculty of Fine Arts has long been recognized as one of the top fine arts and design and cinema schools in the world. We're a young university. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and very proud to have been ranked as the top university in North America in that category. Why are we the top university in North America in that category? Part of the explanation is because what our graduates like Jenna and Gina have gone on to do. Or here in Toronto, other people like Naveed Irshad, the CEO of Manulife Canada, Jacques Goulet, the executive CEO of Sun Life, and Fabien Jeudi, the CEO of Equitable Life. We go beyond the insurance industry, but I thought I'd just name drop a few of those for you. As you know, we've come through a recent election in Canada. I'm very proud that 14 Concordia graduates were elected to sit in the House of Commons, including Mandy Goldmasty, who is the first Indigenous Minister of Indigenous Services in Canada, and also Francis Scarpelaggia, who was just named Speaker of the House of Commons. And they will join a number of other Concordians who are very prominent in the public service in Canada. The second reason why I think Concordia's status in the global rankings is where it is right now is because of the focus and impact of the research that we do. And that brings me to the topic that has brought us all here tonight. Concordia currently leads a large consortium of universities, private, public sector, and not-for-profit partners, about a $200 million project on the electrification of society called Voltage in French and Voltage in English. And the goal of that project is to bring applied solutions to the energy transformation that Canada needs, focused around electrification in particular. And it's not just about battery development, which is an important component. It's also about the application and creating integrated grids to serve the needs of diverse cities and communities across the country. It's a partnership-oriented collaboration. We partner with other universities, including Toronto Metropolitan here in this city. We partner with the cities of Montreal, Halifax, Calgary, Shawinigan, with large organizations like Power Corp, Hydro-Québec, and Alstom, but also with one of our most important partners, Indigenous Clean Energy, and I think you'll hear a little more from Chris Henderson on that this evening. We're all in at Concordia in terms of tackling climate change. In April, our university foundation announced that it had successfully completed the transformation of its investment portfolio to be 100% sustainable investments. I think we're the first university foundation in Canada to have achieved that goal. And 2 weeks ago, we announced with Hydro-Québec and Énergir a major project that we hope will lead to the full decarbonization of the 20-plus buildings on our Loyola campus and the creation of a district energy heating and cooling system that we hope will serve the neighborhoods around our campus as well. It's a really exciting project. The last thing I want to say is that, as always, we're drawn to partner with the Walrus for these talks. Because this is a moment in time where we really need public conversations, and we need public conversations that are cut across different sectors and hear from leaders in different fields as we tackle some of the major issues that are not only important for Toronto and for Canada, but frankly globally important. And that's one of the reasons why we're so thrilled to be here tonight and partnering with Jen and the Walrus. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy a great evening.
Graham, congratulations on all that success. I have to say, Concordia really changed my life. A friend of mine was sending me the other day the campus radio schedule, the program schedule, and that was from when I was at Concordia. I was asked to be a DJ at CRSG, and I was like, oh, you like music, you should apply to be a DJ. And then I ended up co-program manager, and then I ended up the station manager, because at Concordia, there's just so much space to say yes. And there's the theory, of course, in class, but for me, it was the practice on campus and the connection between the two. Canada has committed to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Electrification of our industries, transportation systems, businesses, and homes will play a critical role in achieving this target. What are the policy, environmental, and social impacts of electrifying Canada's power economy? Tonight, we have 7 speakers with 7 minutes each to share insights into the innovations and challenges involved in electrifying society in a time when economic resilience has taken center stage in the national conversation. Tonight, we'll be hearing from Rick Smith, President, Canadian Climate Institute; Dr. Faye Diamantoudi, Dean of Graduate Studies and Professor of Economics at Concordia University; Chris Henderson, Curator, Transformative Energy, Founding Executive Director, Indigenous Clean Energy, Chair of Partnerships at Voltage en français. We also have Susan McGeachie, Founding Partner and CEO of the Global Climate Finance Accelerator; Emily Whetung-MacInnes, Director, Indigenous Partnerships, Ontario Power Generation; Mo Kabbara, Executive Vice President, the Transition Accelerator, as well as Rachel Doran, Executive Director, Clean Energy Canada. Thank you all for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Smith. I'm the president of the Canadian Climate Institute, and I'm the opening speaker. And I think the reason they asked me to do that is because I brought props. So fair warning, I only have 7 minutes. The clock's already started. I'm going to ask for some audience participation. So I only have 7 minutes. So if you lollygag at responding to my questions, it's going to come off my time. So when I ask for some audience participation, if you can just quickly put up your hand, I'd appreciate it. So here we go. Are you ready?
We're ready.
All right. So here's my first question. How many of you came with one of these in your pocket this evening? Well, I see some people put up your hand. If you got to hold up your device if you came with one of these in your... Nobody. The answer is nobody. Okay, here's my second question. How many of you came with one of these in your pocket this evening? Hold them up. Hold them up. The answer is, with the possible exception of this fellow over here, the answer is everybody came with one of these this evening. And that right there is what you call technological transition. And that's what I'm going to be speaking about for the next 5 minutes and 50 seconds. For those younger members of the crowd, this is a rotary dial phone, of course. Many of us are old enough to have grown up with one of these. Then we got push-button phones. Then we got very large, clunky cell phones. And then we got much better, smaller cell phones. In 1982, when I was in grade 8, I can still remember the excitement of being invited over to my friend Mike Matisco's house. And he had just got a brand new Commodore PET computer. And I can remember the excitement with all of our friends of crowding into his bedroom and looking at this beautiful white, I swear it glowed like a sacred monolith. And we were afraid to touch its magical keyboard. Then, of course, we all got computers. Then we got laptops. Then we got the internet and social media, and everything changed. In a similar vein, we're all experiencing right now the transition from the dominance of cable TV to the dominance of streaming and YouTube. My point here is that we know what transitions look like. We know what transitions feel like to live through. We know that in many cases, excuse me, we know that in many cases the new machines are just better. And it's this new functionality, this machine improvement that drives the transition's uptake. And that's what's happening right now in the energy space. There are many arguments for the energy transition. You're going to hear some very smart, talented people articulating them tonight. But my kickoff pitch this evening is that first and foremost, this is a transition that is going to make our life better. And because of that, it's going to happen sooner than we think. Now, climate change is a complicated, multifaceted thing, but if you were to draw one thread through the discussion, it is the necessity of electrification. In order to solve climate change, we need to electrify pretty much everything, and we need to make sure that we're producing that electricity in a non-polluting way. So we need to transition to electric vehicles. We need to transition to electric heat pumps. And we need to produce our electricity with non-polluting sources like solar and wind and hydro. The good news is that these new machines aren't just better for the planet, they're better for consumers as well. I can still remember the first time I drove an electric vehicle. My two sons were much smaller at the time, and the sales guy took us to a quiet street in the back near the lot, and he said, "Floor it." And the acceleration and the handling of this car was off the charts. And after the test drive, my sons and I were just grinning like idiots. We live in a drafty old Toronto semi. Our existing HVAC doesn't properly heat the second and third floors. And so the mini split heat pumps we just got are incredible. They're operated with a little remote control that allows you to vary temperature by room. In addition to their improved functionality, it turns out that these new devices are a superior financial deal. Renewables are quite simply the most cost-effective forms of energy ever devised. Solar power costs have fallen by more than 90% over the past decade. They continue to decline. In most places in Canada, heat pumps are cheaper to operate than the fossil fuel alternatives. And over the medium to longer term, EVs are cheaper for consumers as well. So increasingly, there's no need to appeal to altruism in the energy transition. Consumers are increasingly seeing the inherent benefits of the new machines in terms of improvements to their quality of life. Clearly, there's lots of similarities in terms of previous technological transitions and the current move to electricity, but there are, of course, important differences as well, and I don't want to gloss that over. The biggest difference is that the energy transition has a deadline. In order to ensure a sustainable future for human life on Earth, in order to stop global warming, we must meet the scientifically established goal of net zero emissions by 2050. So the clock is ticking, time is of the essence, and I get asked all the time by folks, what can I do to fight climate change? And increasingly, I just say this. I answer, embrace the transition. Embrace this transition like you've done with many other transitions in your lives before, and encourage everyone you know to do the same. So the next time you replace your furnace, get a heat pump. The next time you replace your car, buy electric. There's lots of grumbling about the electricity transition. There was a terrible article in the Globe and Mail yesterday about electric vehicles. Lots of naysaying in the media about the alleged deficiencies of heat pumps and electric vehicles. Ignore all of this. This transition is coming. It's coming more quickly than we think, but it cannot come fast enough. All right, I got my last 30 seconds here, so get ready. Here's the last audience participation. If you're a baby boomer, I want you to put up your hand. A lot of baby boomers here, and I'm sure online. Now, keep your hands up, baby boomers. My question is this: did you want to be the last person on your block to ditch your black and white TV and get a color TV? Or did you want to get that color TV? I think you wanted that color TV. So if you did, please don't be the last person on your block to buy an EV. Are there any Gen Xers in the crowd? My people. Thank you, Jen Hollett. Proud Gen Xer in the front row. Gen Xers, did you want to be that last person in your friend group with a cassette Walkman on your hip? Or did you want to have that super cool CD version on your birthday? I know you wanted that CD player, because I certainly did. So please don't be that person sticking with natural gas when your neighbors are buying heat pumps. And finally, of course, millennials and Gen Z, and I'm pointing at my son here in the third row. Millennials and Gen Z, put up your hand. My charge is simply this. Suffice it to say that fossil fuels are analog and you are digital natives, and you need to lead this charge. This transition is not, of course, inevitable. Certainly rotary dial phones were not adamantly defended by powerful vested interests like fossil fuels are today. But we can do this together. We've transitioned before many times, and accessing those positive cultural reference points will help us to do so again. Thank you very much.
Bonsoir, good evening. I'm Faye Diamantoudi, Professor of Economics and Dean of Graduate Studies at Concordia University. I'm here to talk to you today, without props, about the instance where these two worlds of mine, the professor and the dean, happily collided. During my humble beginning as a theoretical economist, I studied coalitional stability, a term some reclusive, bearded old professor would concoct? Not really. It is the thing underlining many of our global challenges. Coalitional stability addresses situations where the common good that can be achieved by all, countries, municipalities, cities, citizens, companies, when acting together, is undermined because each of these agents acts in a self-interested manner against the common good. Sounds more familiar? My work with graduate students and collaborators tries to identify tools that will deter each of us from deviating and sabotaging the common good, and at the same time encourage us to stay the course. One of the most important applications of my theoretical work is the stability of international environmental agreements. Montreal Protocol, 1987. Kyoto Protocol, 1997. Paris Agreement, 2015. And these are just 3 out of some 3,000 agreements signed so far. Is climate change still a problem? Just the numerous attempts to address it attest not only to its existence and gravity, but also to the difficulty in doing so. The challenge lies exactly in the juxtaposition of each country's desire for global collaboration and inability to commit and act towards it. So, what would make a difference? What would bridge the conflicting interests of each country? The list of instruments is long, but there are 2 that matter now for this conversation. Technology. Of course, we need different, cleaner ways of producing and consuming, because part of the tension lies in the fallacy that we need to do less to pollute less. No. We just need to do differently so that pollution, the byproduct, the negative externality, is no longer there. Doing differently requires investment in the knowledge economy, requires human capital to generate impactful innovation so that we can permanently alter the dilemma, so that individual and global interests are aligned and no sacrifices are necessary for the benefit of all. And choices. Choices based on information and awareness. The choices we all make on what to purchase, where to live, who to vote for. Amidst fake news and misinformation shaking faith in science, we must continue to invest in the knowledge economy. The more we educate ourselves, the more we will educate others, and educated citizens make educated choices. It is much easier to negotiate, to share, to commit to others, and to future generations when all this is done over a common and undeniably verified set of facts and truths. I introduced myself as a professor and a dean of Graduate Studies. As a dean, I'm meant to fuel the Canadian economy with talent, with human capital, with expertise that innovates, produces new technologies, and introduces ways of achieving growth with less spillover damage. I recruit and support thousands of graduate students in labs and research centers and institutes where the novel ideas become impactful results. And these students graduate and move on to work and contribute to the advancement of our economy and society with the skills they acquired. And the benefits perpetuate. And this is where my worlds collide here tonight. Voltage research is about the electrification of society. This means carbon-neutral solutions that will come from research in building technology, energy storage, smart grids, and transportation electrification. My role in Voltage as an administrator is to bring together 250 doctoral students that will do exactly what years of my research preached. Change the way we do things. Do it in a cleaner manner. Do it in an efficient and sustainable manner. And spread the news. Voltage has taken off with a lofty yet attainable goal: to significantly decrease global CO2 emissions by reinventing buildings and transit systems, by engaging communities to reduce emissions. Voltage is bringing together over 140 established researchers across various disciplines with a joint vision to address the technical aspects of electrification as well as the societal and policy-oriented challenges they entail. I'm full of optimism around what lies ahead in the joint path that the collision of my two worlds has carved. I look forward to meeting and supporting our 250 young and brilliant minds and witnessing firsthand their advances. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chris Henderson. Among my roles, I am chair of the Partnership Circle for Concordia University's Voltage Initiative. It's a role I cherish since it brings the intersectionality of research, technology, innovation, and deployment, which is essential for our country's and the world's decarbonization economy. I am also the curator of a recently launched global dialogue platform called Transformative Energy. Google it. I believe you will find it engaging, inclusive, and insightful. The opening line to the Beatles' tune, Hello, Goodbye, is you say yes, I say no, you say stop, I say go, 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 oh no. These lyrics are telling. For Canada's power economy is on a long and winding road towards a cleaner, more abundant energy future. Many lights are bright green, yet vital ones are flashing red. A fatal flaw when we speak about a decarbonization economy is that it's a race. It's all about winning. Most certainly there are temporal imperatives, especially given the existentialist threat of climate change. But let us cast our goals on a solid foundation. A power economy must be erected on the pillars of social resilience, social vibrancy, and a social compact between the interests that embeds a shared value ethos to planning and building Canada's 21st century energy system. I believe a power economy must explicitly and implicitly be based on reformed psychological and behavioral synapses across Canadian society. For when communities and countries commit to collective interests, we catalyze change. This is in essence a new decarbonization DNA, a diverse array of power economy neural connections. Hey, electricity, I've got to get you into my life. When people and communities are empowered, engaged, shaping and benefiting from decarbonization initiatives, several dynamics move forward. Proactive policy, is supported. The design of clean energy projects is enhanced, generating more substantive social, environmental, and economic outcomes. In effect, a power economy should be a shared value economy. We can make it happen with a little help from our friends. This premise is highly pertinent because we are in a headlong dash towards building everything fast. A long overdue mindset, though what about unintended consequences? We must not degrade or eliminate regulations and frameworks that protect habitat and species, or run roughshod over Indigenous sovereignty with measures like special economic zones. Can we get there while respecting values? Resoundingly, yes. Over 300 major renewable energy projects are operating across Turtle Island right now with Indigenous partners, all built in the last 15 years and more to come. And I would add, that's one of the reasons I'm participating in Voltage, because of the university's commitment and Voltage's commitment to Indigenous inclusion. One notable project among many is Wate Power in Northern Ontario, which is connecting 21 remote diesel-reliant communities, Indigenous communities, to the provincial grid, co-owned and jointly developed by Indigenous communities and private partners. Wate is building a new transmission corridors through the boreal forest while respecting and protecting species habitat and sacred Indigenous lands and waters. If we embrace and practice the principles of social inclusion for a power economy, politics, policy, and projects converge. Some of you may be thinking, hey, Chris, but didn't you just say a building fast mindset is long overdue? Obladi, oblada, I guess I did. So let me speak to that mindset and put forward 3 specific power economy strategies. Number 1, denominate demand for a power economy. If you lock in buyers for clean electricity for the long term with guaranteed supply, with set and gradually increasing prices, you have the capital backstop to build it. That's what the renewable energy sector has done with partners largely Indigenous. The private sector should not expect a free ride with public subsidy, though there is a place for early stage support and technology venture support as well. Number 2, unbundle the morass of administrative processes. There are a myriad of restrictions that are forestalling and lengthening project approvals. In the desire to build perfect mousetraps, we have inadvertently found ourselves trapped in a quagmire of administrative processes, protracted timelines, and arcane rules. Public officials need to be unleashed and sufficiently resourced to move at scale with alacrity while maintaining the core function of government oversight for public good. Let us learn from the remarkable success of the COVID vaccine development, and perhaps we should also keep the lawyers out of the room more often. Number 3, emphasize execution to accelerate a power economy. Constructing projects on time and on budget seems elusive these days. So what needs to change? Let me use some musical terms. Allegro is the term for fast music. We need to accelerate tempo and quicker rhythm for projects where delays are penalized and performance is rewarded at a premium. I think you might know that in Toronto, where you have 2 seasons, winter and construction. Orchestra or collaborative effort is needed. Say, for example, if all utilities around the country all together order their transformers together, which are difficult to get on time, which would then cut cost and guarantee delivery. Conducting is developing decarbonized infrastructure through linking long-term demand requirements and supply relationships. Power execution economy all together now. To do this, we need knowledge and research. And therefore, crafting knowledge and research needs that grounding which Concordia University and researchers bring along with civil society, including with Indigenous communities. I do want to apologize for my unabashed references to Beatles music in my remarks, but I couldn't just let it be. Besides, a power economy does mean our revolution. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Susan McGeachie, CEO of the Global Climate Finance Accelerator. The Accelerator was established in response to global efforts to gradually reallocate the flow of capital from high carbon intensive assets to low ones. We're changing the no-go investment to how-to, and so I'll get pretty specific and talk through a couple of examples. We're looking at how can a privately owned mid-sized business actively participate in and benefit from Canada's national electrification efforts. And so to do this, we worked with a very specific business to see how could we make it economically viable for this business owner to invest in his own on-site renewable energy generation to power the electrification of his fleet and his manufacturing processes. And then we wanted to look at how do we aggregate multiple businesses to do the same thing, maybe just starting with a province, but eventually scaling across the nation to attract larger flows of capital into a securitized pool of individual small business investments. So we dug into this really unsexy area for a couple of reasons. The mid-market is the backbone of the Canadian economy. Finding the how to ignite this engine will turn policy ambition into real-world impact. It will also help a much-needed diversification of Canada's economy by ensuring that small and mid-sized companies can shape, not just access, the clean economy. That means moving beyond enabling investment for a few large players to a decarbonization investment landscape in which everyone can participate. Democratizing access to investment serves an important dual purpose. First, it builds a more resilient, diversified economy so people can seek employment opportunities from a rich tapestry of options rather than, the limited selection we have today, beyond insurance, Graham. Secondly, and this is my more important point, it would create a culture of shared ownership and excitement around the clean energy transformation rather than the current indifference we're experiencing because most people are excluded from the upside of decarbonization. The shift to clean energy isn't just a story about cutting emissions. It's a story about building industries that will define our country's prosperity for the next 50 years. So now I'm going to do part 2 of Chris's talk. These stories matter. We can learn this lesson from other countries that have set themselves up on a radically different path than the one we seem to be following here in Canada. So Norway, for example, discovered oil in the North Sea in the late 1960s, but instead of simply unleashing private interests to extract it, they nationalized the resource, creating Statoil, state oil, which was later transformed to Equinor to reflect the company's evolving strategy to diversify beyond oil and gas and include renewables. The new name is a blend of equi, symbolizing equality and equilibrium, and Nor for Norway, underscoring the company's purpose to serve Norwegians. Most importantly, the company's revenues were channeled into a sovereign wealth fund. Today, that fund is worth over $1.6 trillion US, and the proceeds are used to invest in education, clean energy, and public infrastructure. So I know many of you have been talking about the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund for many years. I know, people certainly in the sustainability world have. The key that's the key that's been overlooked, I think, in this story is just how much cultural alignment that took for Norway. So, it might seem easier for Norway to build national consensus than in Canada, but it still took a deliberate, hard-won effort on the part of government, civil society, and industry. Norwegians had to be convinced that the purpose of this money-making resource should be to invest in a diversified economy. In doing this structure, Norway saw oil not as a forever fuel, but as a temporary windfall to buy time for what's next. That mindset shift, as Chris was talking about, was just as important as any industrial policy or legislation. Here in Canada, we are at a crossroads. We can double down on business as usual, Or we could make a bold choice to treat electrification and decarbonization not as costs to the economy, but as the foundation of a new future-proofed one. We won't succeed if all of Canada isn't working together. Canada's competitiveness within our national borders and the related interprovincial barriers are one of the greatest threats to our economy. Many of our provinces are rich in clean energy resources, but we lack and Chris kind of talked about this too, we lack the interprovincial transmission infrastructure needed to move electricity efficiently across the country. Major electrification projects need to navigate federal regulations, provincial permitting, municipal zoning, and sometimes multiple court challenges, all of which could be subject to political turnover or policy reversals. Investors don't fear regulation, they fear unpredictability. Perhaps worse is that raising the investment capital across provinces to pay for national interests is a legal and logistical headache. Securities regulation is fragmented, making it more expensive to raise capital in Canada for businesses trying to operate or attract investors across multiple provinces. Anyone play a team sport? I'm going to do an audience participation. Does anybody play a team sport? Anybody who plays a team sport knows that a team of mediocre players that plays as a team usually can beat a team of superstars that each plays individually. Canada is the latter. We need a good coach to get us playing like a team. Maybe we have one now. The good news is that the economic and social opportunities ahead of us are massive, and there is still time to capitalize on them. Clean electricity opens the door to entire industries, battery manufacturing, and I'm going to do a really quick sidebar to any investors here or online that we really need to save life cycle for the battery recycling value chain part, green hydrogen, electric vehicle supply chains, data centers powered by renewables, all those exciting things that Rick was talking about. In 2023, for the first time, global investment in clean energy exceeded that in fossil fuels. This isn't about ideology, it's about markets and risk management. Canada has the minerals, the engineers, the large pools of capital, and the know-how to structure the right policy, technology, and investment pathways to get there. The opportunity is ours for the taking. We decide. Thank you.
Anin Kinawaya, Gijab Dishnikaz, Ashkingamon Gemandao. I'm Emily Whetung, and I'm thrilled to join you today and give 7 minutes. I've been given 7 minutes on stage, and I thought I'd start by sharing a story. I'm an Anishinaabe from Curve Lake First Nation, and I grew up on an Indian reserve. My parents were teachers and my biggest supporters, always telling me that I could be anything that I wanted to. With all of the opportunities in front of me, I'm sorry to tell you, Chris, I did become a lawyer and pursued a career in law for about 10 years. My First Nation provided me with a significant financial advantage, meaning that I could graduate without any tuition debt. With that context, my story really starts as a young lawyer, moving into my first home and starting a family. For Anishinaabe, we are always thinking about those future generations. Our lands and resources are borrowed from those generations, and it is our job to cultivate them, those lands and resources, so that they are abundant for those future generations. When you find out that you're going to become a parent, that you're pregnant, that you're growing that next generation inside of you, your worldview completely shifts. All of a sudden, there's a very real context for what those future generations mean, and those future generations that you're cultivating the lands and the resources for. They're for that child you're going to bring into the world. For me, becoming a mom made me want to shape the world in a new way. It made me want to create something in which my children could flourish. After having my children and struggling with daily tasks like bathing a baby because you don't have access to clean drinking water, you can't put the baby in a bathtub and just let them play. You have to constantly be aware that they're not going to get sick from the water. It it makes your decisions very, very different. And I decided that I would run in our First Nations election. I became the chief of Curve Lake First Nation in 2019. My goal was to fix our clean drinking water situation, or our lack of clean drinking water situation. We needed creative solutions, and to skip a number of years, we brought a class action lawsuit against the federal government and settled it for what at the time was the largest class action lawsuit settlement in Canadian history. Thank you. It's not the highlight today, but the point of this is that there was no money within our community to fix the drinking water situation. All of our funds came from federal government grants that were specifically designated to federal government priorities. And those priorities didn't necessarily align with what we wanted to do as a First Nation. At the same time, Ontario Power Generation wanted to build the first new nuclear reactor in the treaty territory of my First Nation. As a former lawyer, the best way to advocate against nuclear power, in my opinion, was to learn as much about it as I possibly could. Throughout this process of development, I was approached as the chief of my community by industry with great visions of positive perspectives on nuclear and why it was going to solve all our problems. I was also approached by anti-nuclear organizations who wanted to use Curve Lake's constitutionally protected Aboriginal rights to prevent nuclear development. Neither of these perspectives took into account what was actually best for my community, my people, and my First Nation. I took an approach of getting informed, collecting information from both sides, and asking questions. And I had many. My first question was, why not just renewables? The answer that I got was, they need to play a role. They're very important. But they only work when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining. That they have waste consequences that is not a part of the common dialogue. Which led me to, what about nuclear waste? This is a great question. It is carefully managed by the nuclear industry. But the biggest question that I had was probably to Ontario Power Generation. What opportunities for economic participation existed for my nation to participate in an economy that we had been systematically and legally excluded from since the birth of Canada? And the answer that I got to that question was particularly important. From OPG's perspective, the answer was yes, there is an opportunity and a conversation. Let's figure it out together. At the same time, my son was growing older. He was playing video games, and he started playing one called Space Engineers. At 9 years old, my son started telling me that he needed to find uranium so he could build microreactors to power his spaceships and build his space stations. I came to realize that these were quasi-informed conversations that I could have with a small child, a future generation, that really informed my perspective on nuclear and what our future generations are going to look for. I came to realize that I really do love the way that nuclear power has a smaller footprint, it's non-emitting, and it manages every cubic millimeter of waste that it produces. I realized that the minimal footprint and non-emitting power meant that it could solve very near-term issues relating to emissions and climate change. And I became an advocate for the economic opportunity and the environmental benefit that align with the beliefs that I've held since childhood. I now work at Ontario Power Generation, as you heard when I was introduced. I'm the Director of Indigenous Partnerships, and I work to make sure that there are Indigenous owners of all of our greenfield projects going forward. In the next week, you'll see an announcement that I'm the Vice President of Indigenous Partnerships, Indigenous Relations and Partnerships at Ontario Power Generation. Now thank you again. In our culture, when we tell a story, we don't usually tell you why we're telling a story. But I thought, given that we're sharing cultures today, I'd be a little bit more pointed. What I'd like everyone to take away today is the reminder that we need to evaluate the information that we receive in critical ways. We need to think everything through, and we need to make informed choices that are best for each of us and the communities that we are part of. And I want to ask everybody to think about our future generations, and this is probably the most important thing for me. We need to build a network of allies, ensuring that all of our future generations live in a world that we can be proud of. Miigwech.
Good evening, everyone. It's really great to be here today. I want to thank my fellow speakers here. It's been great and inspiring to hear all the talks. I'll spare you the puns, but is everyone feeling recharged or given the current events or the shocking, news? This is actually a Trump trick. He says he doesn't want to say something and he goes on actually to say it. So I kind of, by telling you I'm sparing you the puns, I actually got all the puns that I wanted to get out. So I'm going to take us back in time as well, not a little bit further back in time than Rick. I'm going to the agricultural revolution, so I don't have any props for that. But if we kind of look at the ways that we've kind of governed and run our societies, starting from when we actually started living in forming cities and forming societies, and in terms of the energy resource that we used, I would say we were a solar society. We used wood, photosynthesis instead of photovoltaic. We used wind and water, and really it all comes back to solar energy as stored in differently. But this kept us, we were quite limited in what we could do. And then coal came around, right? Britain built an empire with coal. We had steel mills, we had engines. And then America discovered oil. And we had cars, and we had planes, and petrochemicals. And, the American century was born. But here's the thing about these energy shifts. And, we've heard about this transition. We heard Rick talk about transitions that we've seen. They don't just change the way that we fuel our needs, but they completely flip the script on which countries matter, which economies thrive, and which technologies become possible. So today, I'm going to make, the point that we're living through one of those moments right now. We have entered the era of electricity. I wanted a Twilight Zone like cue sound here, but it would have been difficulty. So if you only take the one thing with the remaining 4 minutes and 35 seconds that I have left, is that it is critical for Canada to take action and lean into electricity if we want to matter technologically, economically, and geopolitically. And let's be clear, oil has been extraordinarily good for our country. It built Alberta's prosperity, it funded our social programs, and helped make us one of the world's wealthiest nations. But this switch is not about that we were wrong in the past. It's really about asking the question, what does the future demand? So let's ask that question. When you think about the future, think about artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, robots, precision. What is that going to be powered by, right? What can deliver precision to the millisecond in terms of how many watts or joules, depending on your energy unit of choice? It's electricity. And you know who realizes that? China. So China has been dubbed as the world's first electro state. This is fresh off the press, this term, last few months. So China basically generates around 30% of the world's electricity. Their national electricity company, number 3 or number 4, depending on the year, in revenue globally, right after Amazon and Walmart. Basically been competing with Saudi Aramco. It's electricity utility. What they've also done is that they've realized that the future is electric. They dominate the renewables supply chains, the critical mineral supply chains, the battery supply chains. And basically, when we look at that, we realize that, for us to matter and for us to be able to compete globally, we need to catch up. But luckily, the game is not over. Here's the thing also about Canada. We've basically been electrical power pioneers over the century. We've harnessed power from Niagara Falls when people were still burning candles. We've built huge transmission lines over what seemed like impossible distances. And we've also developed, innovative technologies. The first commercial lithium battery came out of Canada. So we're really talking about, can we actually do this? Can we double the grid to meet the electrification of transportation and, heating and of society that, fellow speakers talked about earlier in the next 25 years? Well, we've actually doubled the grid every 10 years when we were first building and electrifying basically a continent-sized country. So we're really standing at one of those rare historical moments where the entire basis of economic power is shifting. That was even before the tariff craziness, and now I would argue it's even more. Oil did build the 20th century economy, but electricity will build and is building currently the technological economy of the 21st century. And it's already happening. We're already here. And really, we need to make sure that Canada is leading this instead of watching from the sidelines. We've heard from our speakers earlier today. We have the resources, we have the engineers, we have the knowledge, we have the opportunity. We really need the vision to see electricity, not just something that can power our devices so we can argue on Twitter, but it is really the foundation of economic power in the age of artificial intelligence and also solving climate change. Notice I just said climate change first time. I'm less than a minute in. So you can see what the drivers here are. It's not just that, as I've said, it's not, you don't have to be altruistic to actually think this is important. So this is the message I want to leave you with, is that regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, regardless of your your economic ideologies, it's very clear that Canada has an opportunity here to benefit from this. And we can benefit because there's going to be opportunities across all regions in the country. There's going to be opportunities to really have meaningful Indigenous reconciliation by offering and extending real economic opportunities and ownerships to Indigenous nations to participate in this economic opportunity for the country. So with that, I'll leave you with this one statement. The future is going to be electric. It's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And as Rick said, there's a deadline there, and we need to make sure that we're meeting it. Thank you.
All right. Well, as the last speaker, there's been a lot of time travel already this evening, and I'm going to take you on another one. So let's turn the dial in our time machine, not so far back, fall 2021. So you remember, we all had masks in our pockets. My now preteen was listening to Disney's Encanto on a loop. And we just got rid of Donald Trump for good, right? And back here at home in the Canadian fall federal election, the number one issue was climate change. Before healthcare, before the amount of taxes people paid, climate change. Now, 4 years later, before getting here this evening and listening to all my brilliant colleagues, you could be forgiven by listening to the news for thinking that maybe the electrification economy was dead. Consumer carbon pricing's in the news, it's over. Donald Trump is lighting every regulation that might lower pollution on fire that he can find. But yet, over the next 2 years, 95% of the electricity growth demand globally is going to be met by renewables. Here at home across Canada right now, in each and every single province, either we have a procurement ongoing for renewable energy or renewable projects being built. So how's this happening? How's the electrification economy booming in the face of climate change? And I think my speakers have given away the punchline here. It's because in almost every jurisdiction globally, renewable energy is becoming the cheapest new source of demand and generation production. And because cost curves have come down almost 90%, the UK Climate Change Committee had to review the cost to hit net zero. So they were looking back at what they figured out in 2020. They're revising it now in 2025. They found that the cost to hit net zero had come down by 75%. So I think, when you look back again in 2021 at what Bloomberg was saying was going to happen with solar PV and batteries, it was increasing over time. But every year they had to revise their projections up and up and up until this year it's looking more globally like an S-curve. And, as technologies are changing, and for these reasons that they are changing in cost and their ability to provide energy security, people's attitudes are changing. So we recently polled people in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, Metro Vancouver, about their attitudes about clean technologies like heat pumps and EVs, and grouped them kind of by demographic. So retired homeowners actually happen to be twice as interested in lowering their carbon footprint as a group of suburban, working, middle-class parents. But the two groups were equally interested in adopting heat pumps and EVs. So maybe this is an electro-tech revolution not fueled so much by climate change, but by these other factors. Now, before you leave here today saying, well, the Walrus Talks lady said climate change is solved, the electro-tech revolution is going to solve it, clearly we still have a few problems. And I think, misinformation, the increasing polarization of our politics, these are real challenges that are absolutely going to influence how we see this particular revolution unfurl. But I'd suggest here in Canada we have 4 horsemen that are slayable, that we can address, and that really will impact our ability to benefit from this moment of change. So the first one is our integration with our neighbors south of the border of the United States. So, we're the 9th biggest economy in the world, but we've been living next to number 1. And for reasons of market integration and others, it's been easy to adopt by reference the Energy Star rating for your refrigerator, the safety and fuel emission standards for your vehicle. All of these things have been coming from the US. And as they are setting off in their own path, it was already very unappealing to be stuck on an island with Donald Trump. But while the rest of the world is starting to drive vehicles that you can fuel up at 40 cents a liter and that charge in 20 minutes, it's going to look less appealing. So it's our moment to figure out, can we take back and find a Canadian approach to some of these pieces? And that is tied to number 2, which is, I think in both cases, it's hard to look beyond a fossil fuel powered economy. And don't get me wrong, fossil fuels are going to constitute a large source of our exports for years to come. But when you look at all of our largest export markets after the United States, the places where we want to sell more things now, all of these countries still have industrial carbon pricing, a net zero target. Half of them are looking at or have carbon border adjustment mechanisms. They're regulating the amount of electric vehicles in their market. The question is simply, is it a safe bet to be betting on something the world is going to want less of? 4th, big challenge, getting big things done in government. And this isn't a slander. I've spent a lot of my career in government and public service, but it's a challenge already raised here this evening. The kinds of industrial policy we want our government to be de-risking capital, attracting investment, figuring out new trade partners. But at the same time, they have been in the business and should not get out of it, of protecting environmental rights, Indigenous rights, thinking through labor standards. And I think it's going to be a tension that we will see rise to the surface over the next few years, and really important, as Chris already mentioned, to try to get that right, and a big challenge. So, can we still win at the end of the night? And I'm going to leave you on a note of optimism here. So Winston Churchill famously said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And I would say that's a crude but useful assessment of human nature, because we are biologically preconditioned to prefer the status quo, even if it isn't better. And so, maybe 2021 we were battling our own challenges, but I think today the economic instability, the geopolitical instability, people are feeling threatened. And so maybe there's an openness to change, because we're seeing some of these technologies actually solve some of the problems and the real problems that people are experiencing today. Maybe the opportunity to open up to some change is maybe even greater than it was in 2021. And for the sake of that same Disney preteen, I'm sure hoping that's the case.
Sitting front row, I like to take notes during the talks, so I'll start by saying thank you to Rick Smith, who clearly carries around a rotary dial phone in his pocket. Thank you for reminding us the urgent deadline ahead of 2050 and encouraging us all to get that Discman that we dream of. Thank you to Dr. Faye Diamantoudi, I find it fascinating that you study international agreements, and ultimately, if we're going to live up to any of them, we have to change the way we do things. Thanks to Chris Henderson, who highlighted that this is also a shared value economy in song. Susan McGeachie, this is the foundation to the future, and it's imperative that we start playing as a team here in Canada. Emily Whetung-MacInnes. Emily, you are a reminder of what leadership is and that leadership matters, as well as do future generations. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Mo Kabbara, we have entered the era of electricity. It is time for us to catch up in Canada. And Rachel, Doran, cost has dropped and it makes sense. And yes, Mo, that is a pun. There have been many weaved throughout the evening. A round of applause for our talkers. At this point, I'm going to ask our talkers to get up and head out to the reception. I love giving them a head start so they can get a drink and catch their breath. And while they do that, I'm going to tell the rest of the audience a little bit more about what we have coming up at the Walrus. If you enjoyed tonight's event, we have another talk on the way. Join us on Tuesday, June 17th for the Walrus Talks at Home DEI. 4 expert speakers will explore Canada's response to the backlash on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We encourage you to sign up for our newsletter to stay in touch with the Walrus. You can do this by opting in to an email that you will receive as a follow-up, or if you're here in person, we have a table outside. That is the best way to follow what we are doing. Also, you can subscribe to the Walrus. We have a print edition, and for those of you here with us, we have a special deal, a full year subscription, 8 issues delivered right to your door for just $25. It's a great deal. Just swing by the table and the Walrus team will set you up. What's really interesting and unique about the Walrus is we are a registered charity, and our work is powered by people like you. With your support, we can ensure that everyone has access to responsible, fact-based coverage on the very issues that will shape Canada's future. You can donate to the Walrus at thewalrus.ca/support or stop by that table. All gifts of $20 or more do receive a charitable tax receipt. Thanks again to everyone at Concordia University and Voltage for making these talks possible. Thank you to our annual sponsors, Air Canada, Bullfrog Power, Inspire, RBC, and Rogers. We're thrilled to be partnering with Bullfrog Power as our green event sponsor. They also have a table in the reception. We encourage you to swing by to learn more about how they help us reduce our carbon footprint by putting electricity from renewable energy facilities onto the grid to match the amount of energy that we've used here tonight at the Walrus Talks. Thank you all for being a part of this conversation in person and online. Have a great evening ahead.